Because when you give assets of a city away, then you're essentially saying that the city isn't worth anything. Something like River's Edge, was first going to be affordable housing that could have been built anywhere. And probably at some point, in order for it to score well enough to get the tax credit financing that it needed, the city probably would have had to provide a subsidy. Now, there is no city subsidy in the deal, and it's something that's going to drive the economy, that's going to create this diversity, and that will become a destination that can actually be used to leverage and drive traffic through downtown. And one of the keys is getting people with money to come downtown. So it's a real catch-22, and you have to think about the rising tide phenomenon, and I think that your strategy has to be much larger than just downtown.
I want to ask you about crime. It's down in Salisbury. It's down 40% since Mayor Ireton has taken office. Now there have been different programs such as the Safe Streets program. Who do you think is responsible? Who can take the credit for this drop in crime, and what more needs to be done to keep this trend going?
I think that a lot of people can take the credit. I mean, first, let me say, we have got an amazing police chief. She is an amazing leader, and she really leverages her force and lets them play on their strengths. We've got a great city, we've got a great state's attorney, and the Safe Streets initiative has been very, very good. Council President Cohen brought awareness of that initiative to us. And before the Safe Streets initiative, there was a mayor's crime task force that was actually formed under the former mayor. And then Mayor Ireton continued that. And there were several subcommittees. The one that I worked with included the university's police chief. It included several members of the SGA. You know, it really brought in a broad and diverse group of people. But I'm especially proud to say that the subcommittee that I worked with really drilled down. We walked through neighborhoods, talked to people, looked at crime statistics, looked at crime maps, and came up with a matrix that identified core problems, who the stakeholders were, and what it would take to fix them, and what success would look like. And that actually became the basis for the Safe Streets application. So, you know, I think that you have to have political will. The council has passed laws that have helped with the initiative, and we're getting ready to do another one about the habitual offenders that I mentioned briefly in the coming weeks. And the mayor, the police department, you know, there's the state's attorney's office. There's so much credit that is due, including neighbors who have stepped up to the plate and have started picking up the phone more and calling the police, because I think that that trust factor has increased.
You just mentioned the SGA. So I want to ask you what you've done to improve the relationship between the city government and Salisbury University, and if you think there's any room for more improvement.
Well, there's always room for more improvement, so let me start there. And, you know, I have long understood the value of what students at this university can bring. When I was the founding director of Salisbury Neighborhood Housing, I had quite a few employees that I hired out of this university. Some started as interns, and they had opportunities to do really meaningful work and build great resumes, and you know, you can't help but be in awe of the talent that's here. Above and beyond that, as part of the work with the Crime Task Force, Pat Gotham and I co-founded the We Love Salisbury event. After a particularly problematic night, he and I got together and said, you know, what can be done to improve the feeling of community of the students who are only here for 4 years? You know, how do you make them feel tied and connected? And we said, well, what about We Love Salisbury? So that's how that came to pass, and it has really flourished. And those kinds of one-on-one relationships, the power of that should not be underestimated. Then as far as the university as an institution, I'm happy to say that I loved working with Scott Jensen. And now we've got Robbie Sheehan. The university was critical in partnering with the city to do the improvements in the Only Road Bateman Street intersection, because that was a real safety concern. And the first answer was no. And it took this council to say, you know, we know we're going to take some political heat. Some people will say, oh, they're revisiting something again. But it's a problem, and it needs to be dealt with. And it needs to be dealt with in a way that is fair to the neighbors who live around it, that promotes safety for bicyclists, for pedestrians, for motorists, that has everybody taking their fair share of the responsibility for it. And that was a great partnership with the university. Recently, we've been able to put in some bus parking places over by the stadium. And, you know, I walked with Scott Jensen before he left, talking about how we figure out better connectivity between the university's campus and downtown in order to see downtown flourish in a more significant way. So there are lots of opportunities. I've talked to some students that I ran into one day at the zoo in the park, and they had tablets with them. And I don't mean their iPads. I mean actual paper tablets and pencils, and they were doing something. And I said to them, you know, the zoo is very expensive for the city to operate, and it is the city. You're probably surprised to know that it is the city that pays for the operations of the zoo, even though it's a regional attraction. So I'm constantly looking for ways to help make the zoo better, but to take that burden off the relatively small number of taxpayers in the city when you compare it to the number of people who benefit. So I asked them if there were some sort of curriculum opportunity with the university to do internships, if that might be something that they would find interesting. They said, absolutely. They said, and that would make the university special. You know, it would give them something special to offer that isn't offered in other places. And, you know, we would even pay for something like that as part of our studies. So I think that there are all kinds of opportunities, and we just have to be willing to, you know, take away the old barriers and say tomorrow is a new day, another day. With lots more challenges. So let's figure out how we can work together and get it done.
I want to move specifically to the race, to the election.
Okay.
The primary showed us that you're going to be facing good competition, stiff
That's
competition
right.
in the general election. What are your plans campaigning forward? How are you going to get your message across and retain your seat?
Well, of course, some people know, some people don't, that just a little bit into the primary season, my dad became quite ill. And so they live here in town. And so I took some time to help my mom and dad, and I'm not sorry that I did. Going into general election, you know, I'm going to do what I've always done, which is to talk to people. I have my campaign website, as I mentioned, Campbell, the number 4, Salisbury.com. I have a Facebook page. If you can imagine that, I have to sort of laugh because I willingly embrace technology, but I stumble with it a little bit. I'm a grandmother, you know, so I figure it out. But I do have a Facebook page. I have a fundraiser that I think is going to be really exciting and uniting for the community coming up on the 15th of March, and it will be downtown, actually, at Chesapeake East, which is across from the city's marina, on the 15th of March, starting at 6 o'clock. And I won't have an age bias, so I'll ask you the question instead of assuming that I know the answer. Do you know somebody named Jimmy Merchant?
I don't.
Okay, well then it's because he was the writer of the song "Why Do Fools Fall in Love." He's considered to be the father of doo-wop. He was a member of Bobby Lyman and the Teenagers, and he is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And he and other musicians will be doing a jam at Chesapeake East on the night of the 15th. And I think it's going to be something like Salisbury has never seen before that people of all ages and all races will enjoy, and it will sort of take us into a year and a half from now when River's Edge is up and running, and what having an even more vibrant artisan community in Salisbury could mean to us as an entire public. So I think that it will help people to understand a picture of what some of the possibilities are if we start to think about what is possible and that anything is possible, and quit letting the notion of impossibility stand in our way.
I love to ask this next question. I think it really gives viewers some insight into who they're voting for. Tell us about some of your influences, especially those that influence how you make policy or how you decide on policy.
My influences, my parents, my grandmothers. I mean, my grandmothers taught me that as long as you keep trying, you can never fail. That, failure is when you stop trying. And I mean, they taught me to be prayerful. And they taught me to be able to look somebody in the eye and disagree with them without being disagreeable, and to listen to what they had to say, and to do my best every day to leave the baggage at the door. To go in and have a discussion that's pure of heart and honest and informed, and then to have the courage of your convictions, because some of the decisions that we make, and sometimes when we do have to say no, it's tough. But if I know that it is in the best interest of the public that has entrusted me to hold this position, then if no is the right answer, the answer will be no, and if yes is the right answer, the answer will be yes. And I'm always more than happy to explain my position to anyone who asks.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say to viewers, voters, students?
I love Salisbury, and I think that there are more really wonderful things to be done, and I would love to have your vote so that I can continue to do those. And my home is always open to you. My phone is listed. You're always welcome to call you. I'm always happy to talk.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.